Hi, my name's Ron Milts, and I'm going to try and tell you a little bit about the Milts family, originally known as the Miliksich family, spelled about 4 different ways because our relatives came over from Yugoslavia. Rade Milan Miliksich lived in this house where my father was born. Rade was born the 25th of August, 1881, and he married Milksich about 1900 there in Yugoslavia. There's a picture in 1918, the whole family here in Mercer, Pennsylvania. Grandfather died in 1925 in Parkwood, and he's buried up on Belmont Avenue in Youngstown. And grandmother died in 21st of October, 1949, and she's buried at Belmont Cemetery. Grandfather, I believe, was hit by a crane in the mill. Dad was born 1904. He was born in September 27th, 1904. He came over from Yugoslavia at a time when it was very difficult. It was one of the last boats to get here. Here he's seen with his sister about 1920. About 1921, Dad married Rose Casimir. She was born 1907, died in 1924. I understand she died of childbirth, and she and the child, or unnamed child actually, are buried up in Belmont Cemetery also. Dad built a home for her and on the Mahoning, and I still have that lot that the home was built on. I have some stories about Rose that are very interesting, and I know one about a horse named Charlie that she hid in the house from a policeman and told the policeman, no, that horse isn't here. And she just sounds like a very interesting person, very fun person. My dad built this home for her little one-room place, and he never said too much about Rose. I am friends with her nieces and her nephew, John Carlo Olson, and they gave me what information they have here, especially about her dying of childbirth, which was very tragic. Anyway, the lot on the Mahoning is still there. I keep it and wind up giving it to Ronnie. He said he wanted it. This is what it looks like today. The woods kind of grew up around there, and the river's still there. It's an interesting lot because it floods all the time, and so it's not much to build on. This is the paperwork from my mom. It's her birth certificate. I'm not sure what it says because it's done in Hungarian. I have the original. She was born in Pest and came over here on the boat, not with very much money, with her mom and dad, brother Charlie, and brother Francis, I believe his name was. This is the earliest picture I have of Mom. I'm not sure what year it was taken. I know she was born July 2nd, 1904, and she passed away on April 27th, she was married April 27th, 1927. And she passed away the 14th of September, 1988. This is Mom about 1946, and after she had married Dad. She met my dad when she was working at the Browns as a maid, and my father was a chauffeur there. They were married, and they had a daughter, Dorothy. That was their first daughter, and she died of crib death. I don't know too much about Dorothy, except she's buried up at Belmont also. This is my Aunt Caroline and Mom, and I don't know who this lady is. Obviously a close friend. I have a feeling her name is Janetta, since the Janettas were very good friends of ours. Mom and Dad in Parkwood, 1938, 37, somewhere in there, my father opened a store called the Parkwood Market. A lot of people there in Trumbull Hill remember that store. It was one of the first self-service stores around. And you'd go in and actually take your own stuff off of the shelf. This is my sister, Dad, Mom, and my brother Ray, about 1938, in front of the store. He was very proud of this. Had a little bell. He invented the bell you drive over and it goes ding, And he invented that and had it there so when people would drive up there, he would know somebody was in front and to go out and serve them. Made a lot of friends and helped a lot of people through the latter part of the Depression and during the war. And it enabled Dad to meet hundreds and hundreds of people. He was very, very well known and loved in the Parkwood area. And there's a lot of articles that have been written that I have in the scrapbook about him and Mom and the things they did in their little store. He built houses behind the store there on Plymouth Avenue. And my cousin Harry Hulawat, when he came from the war, bought this one. This is the back side of it, looking at it from the store. And cousin Harry bought it in 1946, and he still lives there today, 60 years later. So, that's a pretty good investment I think he gave Dad. This is with my Aunt Isabel, my most favorite person in the whole world. She kind of raised me from the time I was a little boy. She was married to my mom's brother, Charlie, who was an absolute drunk, no-good pig of a person, treated her terrible, so she moved in with us for her safety and brought Corky with her, and they took care of me and took care of the house, and my Aunt Isabel came to love me probably even more than my mom did, and I came to love her just so much. It was just an incredible thing to know my Aunt Isabel, and Corky's still doing fine today. She's living in Kent, Ohio, with her son Ron. This is our house on Randolph Street where we all live, my brother, sister, me, Aunt Isabel, Corky. It's right off of Trumbull Hill. This is kind of a side view, had a little orchard there, and I just went by it in 2006, and it's still kept up and still beautiful home, beautiful piece of property. This is it today. I took it was raining out a little bit, so I didn't roll the window down. Still a gorgeous home, and where we lived for a lot of years till we moved to California. My father formed what was called Parkwood Days, just to get the people together. It was up above Kuzman's there, and an open field they would let him use. And he and a bunch of business guys got together and said, let's have a day when we, let's get together. And so this is the first annual Parkwood Day, and Parkwood Days still go on today. And it's a gathering of ethnic groups, the Serbs and the Crows and the Italians, and everybody gets together for Parkwood Day. There was a lot of cookouts, a lot of friendship. When people come over on the boat and they don't know anybody and have that strange language no one understands, they tend to group up and have fun together as best they can. Here's cousin Corky and Dad, sister, and me. I'm not sure where this was taken, but it's one of those things that, oh gosh, I was little. Here's my dad on his way to load up the rest of the truck on his way to California with the family. We came with my Uncle Frank Barney and Aunt Helen Barney, who were my godparents. It took forever to get here. We had a truck and cars and everything we owned in that big old truck. Dad bought the truck and sold it when he got here. We moved to this house on Magnolia Avenue in Riverside, then known as Arlington. This is me with my mom, the middle lady's my grandmother, Dad's mom, and Dad, and different pictures of, I don't know who these guys are. That's me and Dad, I know that for sure. And the guy on my dad's left, I see him in a lot of pictures. Don't quite know who he is. But the house on Magnolia was on 5 acres, and Dad built some houses beside it, as a matter of fact, that are still there. They're on Golden Avenue. And these are just pictures. There's the front of our house. It's a nice big house. In fact, I think he gave like $15,000 for that house. My mom got naturalized after we moved there. I found these papers after she died. Never did really know until she was in her 80s that she was born in Budapest. Here she is with my sister, who graduated from Poly High in Riverside. This is about 1947. And one of the houses that my dad built, this was the first one that he built. There's my Aunt Helen Barney and their son, Freddie. No, that's Bobby. And my Uncle Frank. These are my godparents, and he had a shop. Uncle Frank had a shop and repaired radios and all behind my dad's home. He had a big garage back there and a bunch of buildings, and so my Uncle Frank did that. And my Aunt Helen worked in a laundry there in Riverside. After a while, they bought a home and moved into their own home. And my Uncle Joe Milts wound up moving into this home, and he lived there until they bought their home over in Corona, where he lived until his death, he and my aunt. My father never did stand still. He bought this place in Bell, California, drove there for every day from Riverside, where we live. A long trip when you have a 2-lane road, but it's called the NATO Cafe, and it was a little nothing of a place, but he kind of liked those old roughshod bars and the B-girls and everything like that. And so that's what he got. You never knew what was going to happen next at the NATO Cafe. We didn't go there too often. I remember there being slot machines in the back room. And I don't know if they were legal then or not, but he had them. Just the same as after he sold the NATO Cafe, he opened he bought a pool hall. The pool hall was just that, had a bunch of pool tables, had this bar right here, and had slot machines in the back, and more fights than I ever saw in any one given place. That's my dad. I don't know who the customer is. My dad was a tough little guy. I can remember him coming over that bar right about where that guy is and kicking a guy square in the chest and knocked him into that wall right there and into it. I mean, like through it, into the barber shop at Roy's next door. And always I sat at the end of the bar down by that door, and it was Ronnie locked the door. And why? So the police couldn't get in. When the fight was over, they'd clean everybody up and put them in the back room and get the blood off, and then let the police in and say, no, nothing was happening. We were just having a loud discussion in here. That was a wild place. My dad had it during the 50s, I think like 1950 until on up. In fact, Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, before long Corey was president, made a movie called Storm Warning, and he used to come in there with the producer and the director and eat because he loved my dad's chili. Ginger Rogers didn't. She was a little snooty. My dad opened the Sportsman's Card Club long after he had the Sportsman's Lodge. I had this card that Brother Roger Mayhall printed. It's kind of a fun thing, but we had the Sportsman's Lodge, which Dad bought from a guy, I can't think of his name, Fred something or another, and it was huge. It was 13 acres. Up front there on the left is a restaurant and a bar and motels on the right and cabins. Our house is way in the back there, and you'll see a corral where when I was 13 I had my horse. And I think my dad gave, oh golly, $50-some thousand for that, and it was a nightmare because after he bought it, he found he had partners he had to buy out. The place was built with World War II stuff and just a terribly built place, and we were always repairing it. From the time we bought it in the 50s right up until after Dad died, we just kept going with it. This was a little drive-in. My dad and Mom ran this for the longest time and did a great business out of this little restaurant. This is the back side of it with my brother-in-law Roger and Mom, my brother, and Harry Woods, cousin Harry Woods. A lot of get-togethers there, especially out the back door. There was all kind of cats hanging out to eat and all. This turned out to be Dee's barbecue pit, where my sister opened up when she was about 21 years old, and she and Barbara ran basically a bar and a place to eat, and did a tremendous business there during the Korean War when my brother was overseas. And Barbara came and stayed with us and lived here. Roger and Dolores lived in the office for a long time and took care of the motels. That's the office kind of in the front there on the left. And they lived there with the 3 kids after they came back from Tonopah. This where it says Sportsman's Lodge and Grill did and was, that's Dee's barbecue pit where she met Roger. That story comes in a little bit. This is my dad back by one of the cabins. He was always in really good shape. Even though he had cancer and suffered with it for over 11 years, he kept himself in good shape and kept up the property nice too. This is the row of motels 1 through 8, and there was always something to do around there, let me tell you. It wasn't just one thing, it was another. Mom and Dad, I like this one for me, and toward Dad, because they were married 34 years and they worked very, very hard during their lives, and Mom was always a part of whatever they were doing in the business. So this is a back view of our home. There in the back on the left is cabin number 14. Mom and Dad and a lady who was a waitress with us for the longest time. Can't remember her name, but she was sure a sweet person. Made a lot of friends there. Mom and Dad always made friends. Here's Uncle Tom and Clyde Dill and my dad and my wife Mrs. Dill and my Aunt Mary. The Dills ran our office for a long, long time. In the 60s, they ran everything. Here's Sister with these 2 little girls. They're twins, the Feely girls. Bertha Feely, their mom, was a waitress for Dad for the longest time while her husband was in the military. This is the front of our house, but actually we treated it like the back of the house. It's a weird house. I got to tell you how it was laid out. It was just weird. But this was supposed to be the front. This was the side. Wish I had those old cars right now. That was a 39 Plymouth truck, pickup truck I sold for $15. Guess what? It snowed there every now and again. There's that pickup truck. Doggone, I had that. I had a 29 Chevy. Well, that's past due, isn't it? I don't have a 29-inch waist anymore. Dad had the first card club in the county. You saw the card, and we opened it. This was the grand opening of it, and he had it in another place before this. This was the new building that he built for it, just not too much before he died. And he had a manager there who ran it. His name was Vaughn Atamian. That about 6 years after Dad died, Vaughn wound up marrying Mom and became Pop, and we always do treasure him too. The card club, of course, it's not there anymore, but cards are a big thing now in Lake Elsinore. They have a huge card club up there now. We always had get-togethers at the house. People always there, always a fun time, and we always liked it. This is my Aunt Helen and Uncle Frank. Aunt Helen's in the middle. That's my Aunt Mary Miller to right behind her, and sister right in front of her. And these are my godparents. That's Roger Mayhall, sister's husband, and my Uncle Tom Miller. He was married to my mother's sister, whose name was Mary Miller. And that's my brother just showing up there at the bottom, and that's little Jana on the left, my mom in the back. I don't know who's behind her. I think it's, I'm not going to take a guess. And that's Barbara holding Jana. A little bit of years ago. My Uncle Tom and there's Jana and Bobby, my brother's girls, and there's Barbara, my sister-in-law, my mom. Same party. We're just all together having a good time. A lot of fun at that house. A lot of people there, and a lot of people coming over. There's Mom and Barbara, my brother-in-law Roger, my Aunt Mary Miller, my Uncle Tom, and my sister. This is probably back about 1958, something like that, 57. They were still before they bought their house, they were still taking care of the office. This is Mom and Dad, probably about 1958, over at my sister's house. In fact, that's my little Chevy in the background. This is Christmas. I was about 14 years old here. That's Hank Woods down at the bottom left, and my nephew Wayne with his head just popped up there, and Michael behind him. Mom and Dad went back east for Tony and Corky's wedding. Corky had asked Dad and always told him that she wanted Dad to give her away, so we drove back there. It took us 4 days to drive. Barbara went with us, and we went to one of the most beautiful 3-day weddings. I'll tell you, I've never been to another one quite like it. Of course, this is Mom and Dad with Tony and Corky. Not quite sure who this lady on the left is, but that's my sister-in-law Barbara and my mother at the same time when we were at Tony and Corky's wedding. And this is like 1959, the year I graduated from high school. We're at my sister's house for Christmas, and with my mom and dad. And, we used to get all dressed up to go places then. Here I am with my dad. I'm 5'8" here, and so you can see my dad's about 5'6", 156 pounds, and I'll tell you, he was just tougher than nails. Just tougher than nails. That's a Serb in him, I guess. My mom, my Uncle Frank Fungello, my Aunt Isabel, and me. I'm 14 years old. My dad and Tony Pasillo. We went there at Christmas time. We just had a wonderful, wonderful time. I'll tell you, it was absolutely great. My dad's closest friends always stuck by him. That's my Uncle Tom, one of his closest friends. My Uncle Tom used to carry my dad around on his shoulders when he was a kid and help pick up coal off of the tracks. My Uncle Frank Barney, close friend. And my Uncle Frank Fungello. They were all just tight, these guys. That's my Uncle Frank on the right, my godfather, and my Uncle Tom Miller on the left. These guys had a history that I don't even put down on paper and surely don't talk about on a microphone, but I'll tell you, they have a history together that's extremely interesting. My dad's funeral, my dad died of cancer. He was just so full of cancer, it was incredible. And his funeral was attended by just so many people. And I remember an old lady by the name of Frankie who walked 6 blocks. It took her 3 hours to walk there just to come to Dad's funeral. And when he had the cab, he was the kind of guy, he'd pick Frankie up and haul her around with him. She was like in her 80s, just to go for a ride and get her out while he picked up fares in the cab. Yep, we owned a cab company too. And people just remembered my dad for that. Sundays, I got to go around in a cab and pick up all the older ladies and take them to Mass because they couldn't get there any other way. I wasn't allowed to charge them. If they paid me, I had to go put the money in the poor box because that's how Dad wanted it done. And he just liked people, and his needs were taken care of. And although he didn't particularly go to church, he was Greek Orthodox, but he just figured if they wanted to go, we should take them and help them out, which I did. So at the age of 57 years old, he couldn't go anymore, and he just decided that was enough. Told my brother-in-law, the heck with it, son. I've had it. Went into a coma and went to sleep. 7 days later, he was passed away. My mom, there with my Uncle Tom, had a lot of relatives, a lot of friends around her that she had the lodge to support her, and she had an excellent way to make a living, and the lodge didn't put her in luxury, but it gave her the ability to go back east and see relatives like she did here. This is Gisela Poloni, and she and my mom were very, very close friends. They used to bake together and have fun together as ladies do. And Gisela lived down around Long Beach, and here they are in Hawaii. They just took off and went. About 6 years after Mom or Dad died, Mom started dating this guy. He wasn't looking like this. He was a little older. It's a younger version of Von Atamian. Uh, he was born in Turkey. He's an Armenian. Came through all of that death camp and all and escaped to the United States. Had a phenomenal story. Served in the military even when he didn't want to. Had a great story about that also. I laugh at Pop. He said, well, I never did really work. I'm a gambler. And that's exactly what he was, a professional gambler. Another thing that he was totally in love with my mother. They were married for 22 years, and I'll tell you what, he treated her so good. After 34 years of being married with my dad and just having to work and work and work, things got a little easier because of the way Dad was able to leave Mom. When she met Pop, Pop was fun. He was the fun side of her life. Although she had a good time with Dad, Pop, he was a romantic, and he always just loved to take Elizabeth everywhere. Just take her here, take her there. And they had a good marriage for 22 years. He died when he was like 74 years old. I believe he had a heart attack. And he looked just this good at the same time. He was still gambling up till that time. In fact, he was in his 70s, about 71 when I saw his bruised knuckles. And I said, what happened to you, Pop? And he said, I got in a fight with this kid. And I said, you got in a fight with a kid? He said, yeah, he accused me of cheating at cards. He says, so I just had to beat him up. I said, how old was he? He said, about 59 or 60. This is Pop's girls. I can't remember their name. I think one is Dolores. Very, very nice girls. I didn't get to know them too well, but they were around and just very much sweethearts and loved their dad. We'll always miss Pop as well as Dad. This is Mom at my house in Indio, and there's my daughter Rhonda, who I always call Skeeter, but she's grown up now, so we call her Rhonda. And I've got some pictures just here of Mom and kids and people and just kind of watching her age as time goes on and where she always got around after Dad died. Here she is with Pop and with more grandkids. There was always grandkids and family, and Pop always managed to drive her wherever she wanted to go. It's let's go here and let's go there. And this is about 1970. That's relatives. My first father-in-law, Dick Rarick, standing next to Pop, and my mom and Dick's brother and his wife and Skeeter. And this is, I think, in the late 70s, a dinner at Sisters. Always we got to go to Sisters for dinners and food and all. And here's Von Atamian when he died, and born in 1908 and died in 1985. Lived a good life, and just had a great time being a part of the family. There's just so many stories to tell about Pop. I guess I should make just a video about him. But one thing he was honest. He said, I've worked one day during my life. I got a blister on my finger. I couldn't deal that night, so I thought, this is not good. What was he doing? Picking fruit. He said, I don't want to do that anymore. This is Rhonda, 1987, with me and of course, and we were at our house in Benicia there in Yucca Valley. The picture in the background in the middle is one Millie painted for me and gave me. This is at my brother's house, and Mother had aged, and just before she passed away, and she'd been in a nursing home. They brought her over to Ray's to eat tacos and have a beer, just get her out of that nursing home place. She wasn't used to nursing home food, but she had so many strokes and was so weak, it was just very difficult to keep up with her. There she was with Rhonda, and here's a dinner also at my brother's. It was always fun going to his place when he'd have people over. He lived in Riverside on Buchanan. They had a coach there, a double-wide coach, and it was just nice and comfortable. And here he is with Mom, and this is Christmas time at Sister's house, and always a get-together at my sister's. Here he is with Mom again. I'm not sure what that says on there, but Mom and my brother had lost his leg, so he had that little go-get-em chair, and this is at my sister's house. Just fun pictures of Mom. So guess what? My sister married a guy whose name is Roger Mayhall. Roger just loved Ray and Barbara. They got always together, always doing something together. And when we would go like to functions or whatever it was, the four of them were always together, and you just never knew what was going to happen. And Barbara was just a fun time. She always had a great laugh, and you can see them here with Mom again. They took such good care of her and loved her, and my sister and my brother had a tender spot in his heart, and there he is with Mom. And he just even when he was in the hospital himself, everybody loved him because they said, gosh, he's concerned about everybody else, not even himself. And here he is with Mom and giving her a kiss. She'd had so many strokes, and she could count her fingers to show you that she was inside there, but the rest of her didn't work too good. So when she passed away, we did the funeral for her, and you can see that was September 24th, and it was a celebration of life for her also. Here's my brother and sister when they were real young. This is in Ohio, and I've got a couple pictures like this, and I really like them. I think they're pretty cool. This is my brother looking Dapper Dan, and my sister, and they're still not even teenagers here. They had quite a life there in Youngstown. My brother had a hard time with my dad. My dad treated him pretty rough. I understand, even mean at times. And so after he grew up, my brother stayed away from my dad a lot, unless he had to. But he would come and help him. There's my brother in the middle right there, and my dad off behind him. And he grew up at a time when it was tough, and my dad was tough on him and just kind of worked him hard. I think he worked us all hard. My sister and my brother and me, this is before we moved to California and started our new life here. At 19, my brother met Jerry Barton and married her. They eloped at the same time that my sister eloped with Joe Bernard, and they all went to Searchlight, Nevada. I think my brother was 20 and Jerry was 19, and she was just a go-get-'em person. She was not only good-looking, she just was as ornery as can be. I remember some boys beating up on me one time and running me off, and she went out there and just took them on, said, "All right, you guys, you want to fight? Let's have at it." But as tough as she could be and as beautiful as she could be. And here's Michael. He was born about a year later after they were married, and he's Michael Glenn Milts. And after they wound up getting a divorce, and after a while, Michael came and lived with us for a short time at our house there in Magnolia, and my dad and mom just loved him. Here he is growing up a little bit. We'd moved to the Sportsman's Lodge. My brother was in the service by now, as you can see by his uniform, and just about to go off and serve in Korea. Michael grew up with his mom and had moved to Arizona. So we didn't get to see as much of him as we'd like to. For a while he was in San Diego and then moved to Arizona, where as an adult he married Anna. And Anna and he are still married and still living in Arizona. Michael has 2 children with Anna, Michael Robert, who was born in 1979, and Brandon James, who was born in 1986. He also has a couple of kids with his first wife, Dawn Jones. He has Teresa Renee, who was born in 1970, and Tuesday May, who was born the 22nd of May, 1973. Tuesday has a child whose name is Bree, and Teresa's does not. Teresa has a child whose name is Takala. He and Anna also have 3 grandchildren, Mariposa and Tatum and Tori. So we've got a lot of kids growing up here, don't we? Here's my brother it's about the time he met Barbara. And he had divorced Jerry and was single, and of course he happened to go into a soda shop in Arlington, and he met this woman. And she is Barbara Anita Jameson. She's a Riverside girl. Started dating her, and they wound up getting married on September the 29th, 1952 in Riverside. Barbara had been married before to a man whose name was King, and she had a son whose name was his name was Young. And she had a son whose name was Danny, born in 1946. And he came along with the package and became an integral part of the family. There's my brother when he was in the service, served in the Korean War and was gone for a time there. And after he and Barbara were married, Barbara came eventually, as I said, to help out with Dee's Barbecue Pit and stayed with us in Lake Elsinore. Had a very lovely wedding. This is Barbara's sister on her left. Niece and nephew on the right, and I'm not sure who my brother's best man was. Well, they had Danny. That gave him a good start, and my brother eventually adopted Danny, and so he became Danny Milts. Even though his name had been Young, it was Danny Milts. And then the girls came. First we had Jana, and then we had Bobby, and Jana was born in 1954 in Riverside on April the 3rd, and Bobby Ray was born March the 10th, 1958. There's my brother. He came and drove the cab after my dad died and helped out around the lodge, always giving, always giving, always giving. And he drove the cab and fixed things up every weekend. You could be assured he was there helping out and making sure Mom was taken care of. This is 1974, I think it says there. Just a portrait my brother had made of him. They were there for family affairs, and we had a really great time together. My brother and Roger and I, and our family drank. Did you know that? And so that was kind of a fun thing to do, is grow up enough to be able to have a drink with your brother and your brother-in-law. My brother lost his leg because of lack of circulation. He wound up losing both of them eventually, and had to leave his job as superintendent of stores for Metropolitan Water District. They lived there on Buchanan until he moved to Apple Valley, and Barbara just cared for him and loved on him, and you couldn't ask for a nicer lady than Barbara to take care of Ray. She was in love with him, and she just adored him until the day he died and beyond. This is a get-together for a time before he retired. They lived in Pomona, and the Pasillos had come to visit us, and so there's Danny and me and my brother, and that's before he lost his leg, my cousin Tony Pasillo. So it was always fun to get together. People come and visit, and this is Danny Milts. I put this together. It was a little bit about him. I don't have a lot of pictures about Danny. The one thing I do know is that at 14 years old, he was scouted by the Red Sox to play for them. He was a phenomenal baseball player. Here's one of his marriages. He was married twice, once to Nola Drake and the other time to Linda Popovich. Both ended in divorce. But anyway, at 14 till he was 16, he was scouted, but he had arthritic ankles, and they just couldn't handle him. By 21 years old, he could hardly run at all. This is my niece Jana. She's the oldest girl of two, and she married a man whose name is Chuck Miller, and together they have a daughter whose name is Christy. And Christy is married to a Mark Henry. They have a couple of kids, Justin and Brianna. And now Jana is married just recently to Mark Pederzoli, and she's living in Horseheads, New York. Yeah, this all happened 2006. And I know that Bobby went back for her wedding, and Jana's really excited. What a change. She moved from Apple Valley, where it's desert, and moved back east. And this is Christy with her two children and Mama. So there's mother and daughter and grandchildren at Grandma's wedding. And this is Christy and her two children, Jana and her new husband. I'm not sure who the other two fellows are, sharp-looking guys, probably friends of the grooms. And this is Bobby Ray. Bobby is living in Apple Valley in 2006, and she's a hairdresser right now. This is she and I just before Aunt Dee died, 2004. We all got together and went out to the graves and just had a great, I think it was a Mother's Day. This is she with her husband Vince. He's a cool dude, and they have a place at the river. They have a lot of fun together. They enjoy everything from boating to motorcycling. This is Nasina. She is Vince's, but we've adopted her as part of the family because Bobby just adores her, and like a mother would, and absolutely a fun lady who now lives in San Clemente. Here's the two girls. This is Jana and Bobby, about 2004. Just as gorgeous as ever with their smiles. And there's Mom and Dad. You saw this picture already. I kind of like this one with everybody together. Kind of nice when we all dressed up and put on a suit, rather than a sweatshirt. Here's my brother after he'd lost his legs. This was probably like a Christmas. We would get together at Sister's Christmas and sometimes Easter. It's always a lot of fun. He had this little go machine. And see the feet down there on that go machine? That's a footstool I gave him, and it has little feet on it, and he'd put it down there for his feet. Little kids would come along and he'd pound on it with a stick, and he'd go, "Oh, doesn't that hurt?" And he goes, "No." Here's Jana and Barbara. This was the year she passed away. Her circulation had been terrible, and she was in such terrible pain. And we had the opportunity to see her about 2 weeks before she passed away, and she still had this gorgeous smile, even though she had all the pain, and just as Barbara. Here's the girls again with my sister, taken all about the same time, we got together. One of my favorite pictures with Ray and Barbara pretty much says it all. Happy, in love, dedicated to one another, and just loving life. And they did love life. And they had a great time together, and I guess they were a couple to reckon with. Anyway. Anyway, here's my sister. This is Sister and Ray and Corky Facello. She was Corky Fungello at the time. And this is back in 1938 in Ohio. My sister went to school there until we moved here in 46, and my brother graduated back there, but she graduated at Poly High School in Riverside. Here she is right in the middle front row. Must have been a bad girl to put her right up there in front. And she had a lot of long-term friends like Rosemarie Janetta, who were friends of hers all of her life. And in fact, 5 years before she passed away, a lot of the girls got together, and I think this fella's name is Bobich. And anyway, they got together in Las Vegas and just, I guess, had a rip-roaring time. Here she is, and when we moved to 1947, this is with my cousin Marie and my mom, and we're at our place on Magnolia. And that was a pretty cool house, 11255 Magnolia to be exact. That's Eddie Miller on the left, and my brother, my cousin Marie, my mom, my dad's mom, and my sister. Here's my sister at the beach, and 1952. I think this is at Newport. Can you believe this is Newport Beach? Go there today. Oh my gosh, what a difference. Here she is at Dee's Barbecue Pit, and one of my favorite pictures of her there. This is about the time that she met Roger Mayhall. And this is Joe Bernard. She married him when she was like 19 years old. She eloped to Searchlight, Nevada. My brother and Jerry got married. She went along. She and Joe got married. And it's lucky Joe Bernard didn't get shot by my father. He's a good-looking guy. I don't know too much about him. I can't find anything about him. And failed to ask Sister about him. So all I have is just this picture of him and, and my sister. And she was absolutely a gorgeous girl. She was working downtown Riverside at the time, so he might have been a professional or something. He's a sharp guy. I have no idea where this picture was taken, and I never did take the time to ask Sister about it. And I guess I didn't, because Joe Bernard was passed, and there was no sense in going there, and I figured we'd live forever, and I'd find out later. So can't find anything more about him. Joe Bernard's kind of a common name. Can't find any marriage certificate. Who cares? I got a brother-in-law. His name was Roger Mayhall. Roger met Sister when she ran Dee's Barbecue Pit. He was getting a divorce from his wife, Juanita. Had 3 kids, Wayne and Michael and Kathy. And he was a softball player. He was a very good softball player. Played center, as a matter of fact. And as a commitment to my sister, said, every game I play, I'll hit a home run for you, which he did for 2 years running that he dated her. And here he is with Wes and Florine, their neighbors. Wes was a cop in town. Florine owned the local theater. My brother-in-law hit a home run. Finally, they took off and went to Tonopah with his 3 kids, Wayne, Kathy, and Michael, and who later became hers, and she adopted them. Juanita and he had been divorced, and I think they went to Tonopah so that my dad wouldn't shoot him. My dad was very protective of my sister, and I guess Roger felt that if he went to Tonopah, he could get out of there. They did good in Tonopah. He worked in a print shop, and until he came back here, and Dad loaned him $5,000 to start this print shop in 1959. They were living at the time. They were living in a rental over by the high school, and Dad loaned them the money, and they started this, and they were there for like 50 years until Roger died and my sister died, and the Mayhall print shop is still there, and their daughter Kathy with her daughter Denise are running it to this day in 2006. Just talked to Kathy today, as a matter of fact. The kids all grew up in Lake Elsinore and graduated from there. Wayne on the left, he married Nancy Harush, I think was her name, and they have a son, Mark, and he was born in Riverside, and now he's married to Rosemary, his second wife, and they live in Texas. Michael, there's Kathy and Michael and Skip today. I'm always going to call him Skip, I guess. Michael married a Catherine Hempstead, his first wife, and they had their children, Matthew and Robbie. He was married in Lake Elsinore. I don't have the exact date, but then he married a lady whose name is Alyssa Catherine Sullivan. So he had 2 Kathys, and this was the first Kathy when he married her, and then the second Kathleen that he's married to today. They have Amanda and Michelle Rose, and this is her with their 2 children. I'm not sure what the get-together was, but I think it was Halloween. Anyway, that's in front of the Mayhall print shop. And of course, then you have Kathy Mayhall, who married David Harrison. And they were married October the 19th, 1968 in Lake Elsinore, and had a wonderful wedding. And she was married to him quite some time. They had 3 children. They had Denise, and Colby, and Casey D. And there's me with my favorite little niece, and she just was really excited that day and cried a lot too. Anyway, she had these 3 children, and of course, Denise, she's got a child today, and his name is Riley, born the 15th of February. This is the 3 kids as they were growing up with David. And Denise has Riley, and then Casey D, she has Adrian and Ethan and Kyler. And Colby, he has children Colby and Rhiannon. And Colby lives in Lake Elsinore. Denise is in Lake Elsinore helping out at the print shop. And Casey D, I think she lives in Idaho. I'm not really sure what town in Idaho, but somewhere there. Roger Mayhall dies. What a terrible tragedy, but he had cancer and he just couldn't handle it anymore. With everything that had happened to him, of all the things to come along would be cancer. So he passed away. It just was very much a loss to all of us. We just love him, and that was in 1989. And my sister never did remarry. She ran the print shop and did well with it. Kathy came in and helped her. That was my cousin Bobby that you were looking at. This is Kathy and my son and sister, all at a wedding for Gibbs' daughter. And then we have 4 generations. Look here, we have sister and daughter Kathy and daughter Denise and little Riley. They were in the newspaper 4 generations after 50 years of the Mayhall print shop. And the Mayhall print shop girls, with my sister's passing, Kathy and Denise are still running the shop, and don't know for how long, just as long as the passion stays. Yep, I was a little kid at one time. That's me, Ronald Anthony Milts, born December 31st, 1941, in Youngstown, Ohio, the only one of 3 to be born in a hospital. My dad said I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I said, well, give it to me, I'll sell it, we'll make some money. I never did see the spoon. This is at my aunt's house in Cleveland. My Aunt Isabel, who raised me for quite a few years until we moved to California. And this is my sister and my brother and I, and just before, I think I was probably 4 here. And enjoyed the move, I guess. You know, it's like, oh, okay. Grew up in Riverside, went to the 3rd grade in Riverside, and moved to the Sportsman's Lodge, where I went to Elsinore Elementary School and Elsinore High School. This is me in about the 8th grade. And oddly enough, graduated from the 8th grade with honors and did very well. Went into high school, did terrible the first year, but came out of high school with honors and managed to even letter. And then I moved back east for a while, went on my great adventure, and came back to, at 21 years old, I met this 16-year-old whose name was Pat Ririg. She was 16 years old in high school, and at 17 years old, I married her. That's her father, Dick Ririg, her mother, Beulah, Pat, and I, and my mother. My father had passed away. We were married at the Methodist Church in Lake Elsinore. And that was September the 21st, 1963. We lived in Lake Elsinore, and I worked at the print shop with Roger and Dolores for a while, and then I went into the real estate business with Brinkerhoff Realty, and we moved to Riverside. And while I was there selling real estate about 1965, I think it was, January the 27th, 1965, my little girl Rhonda was born. And we had a tough time getting her here. Pat was young and nervous, and she had a hard time carrying Skeeter, and the doctor was concerned that the baby was not going to be healthy. And also, I remember very well how she got her name Skeeter. Named her Rhonda Ann, but I saw her brand new, and the doctor brought her out and counted her fingers and toes and all, and told me that the mother was fine and the daughter was fine, and I said, she's no bigger than a little Skeeter. So I adopted her name, and of course now she's older, she's Rhonda. This picture was in when we lived at the Schnack Ranch, and I had bought a bulldozer and gone in business for myself. And we lived out there in a little old house and out by Glen Ivy. Skeeter grew up, and I had her in my life until Pat and I were divorced. And then She was in California until she was 9 years old or so, and then Pat moved with her folks over to Mesa, Arizona, and I really didn't see Skeeter very much. And from this point, maybe 9 years old, until she was like 16 years old, and then got reacquainted with her, only to have her go into the military of all things. That surprised me, but she really liked it, and she really excelled at it. And here's a picture of her. We're sure proud of her decision to do that. And after she got out of the military, she wound up marrying a high school sweetheart. His name is Tim Cloyd. And Timothy Cloyd and she were married in, I call it Phoenix, I think it's Mesa, Arizona. And she and he actually, they were high school sweethearts. And I'm trying to find the date here. They were married March the 1st, 1989, actually in Gilbert, Arizona. And it was a fun wedding. Yeah, Ronnie was there and I was there. And not long after that, along came a baby, Cindy. Cindy Cloyd was born on the 4th of December, 1986. And she was followed by her little brother on the 27th of November, 1989, born in Mesa, Arizona, Travis Cloyd. Those kids today in 2006 are, like 19, 20 years old. He's like 17, about to get out of high school. Wow, time just seems to fly. Well, anyway, the kids grew up healthy and fun, and their parents, Tim is in his own business. He is a mechanic, and he fixes big rigs and bulldozers. And Rhonda works for the federal government delivering mail, which is a love-hate relationship, but she's there. Had one opportunity with the kids in their younger years. They all came out and spent some time with me. We spent two days at Disneyland, 2 full days at Disneyland. And that's Travis with his Uncle Ron. And I don't know who that other relative is there, Uncle somebody. I'm not quite sure who it is. Then I moved to where I am now in San Clemente, and this is Skeeter about 2005. And here's Travis at his 16th birthday party. So time goes on and on and on. Of course, it's another year, and then Cindy graduated from high school also, and they had a big party for her, which we were able to attend. And just really enjoy these grandkids, don't you know? And I kept my bulldozer business, and it grew to a point where I had quite a few bulldozers, and I had quite a spread there, and I really enjoyed it. We did a lot of big projects, and we did a lot of subdivisions, and I had a lot of fun. And I thank her dad for teaching me that bulldozer business, and he got me into this dozer and another one, and I really do thank him for that. Pat she stayed in California for a while, and I stayed with this, and of course about the same time I had started race motorcycles, and this is a job we did up in Running Springs area on 640 acres of land for Norm Fuller. I met this lady whose name was Marianne Bacovey. She was single at the time, and I met her in Struthers, Ohio, when I went back for my Aunt Mary Miller's funeral. This is her daughter Beth on the left, who is my daughter Beth, with my daughter Rhonda. And so Marianne and I were married. She moved to California, of course, and I got this little girl, and just what a wonderful package. And there she is, about 4 years old, and Beth was born in 1969, May the 10th. And so with Marianne and I being married in 1972 in actually Lake Elsinore, Dolores and Roger stood up for us. We lived in this furnished apartment, $65 a month furnished. Can you believe that? I had a bulldozer business and couldn't afford any more than this. Just everything seemed to go in the business. And Marianne and I began our life in that apartment, and we later moved on and bought a house. But during the interim, I kept racing. I raced motorcycles in the desert and in motocross, and I even owned I didn't own the land, but I owned the motocross park that we built on that 640 acres of Norm Fuller's. This was one of my first races when I raced a 175 Yamaha, and Marianne would go with me and tolerate the dust, and Beth just loved it. She liked dirt and everything anyway. This was my friend Gibb and his mom and me, and Don Britt's a friend of Gibb's, and Bill Washburn. This is our old rundown house that we bought for $13,000. And man, I'll tell you, it was on 10th Street in Corona, and it did look a wreck when we bought it. But I had a lot of friends, and I figured if my dad could fix up places, I could fix up places. So I went to my friends and I said, how do I do this stuff? And within a year to a year and a half, we had a beautiful home built in 1906 that was redwood siding, and we'd gone through it internally, and we really made a really nice house of it. In fact, Beth goes on and on about the things we did at it. She remembers it very well. And this was after we had it painted and we redid the inside. Sold that house about 5 years later for $50,000. I got into the scraper business and bought one of the first John Deere scrapers like this. It came out and wound up being kind of a poster boy for them. About that time, though, my little boy was born, Ronald Anthony Milts. And I sold the scraper because the nature of his birth, it took everything we had to get him born. So we sold the scraper, and I went out and dragged up my tools and just started working for wages. But we got him and got him home from the hospital about the same time my knee was being worked on, and I had to actually give up the dirt business and went back into real estate. Here's Ronnie with Mama just absolutely loving on him, and here's right around Christmas time and with me and Beth and Ronnie and Mary Ann. Little girl Beth, I'll tell you, she was something. People would stop and ask to take her picture. She just was such a gorgeous child. And she had a stare that just looked at you through those dark, dark eyes, and beautiful hair down to her waist, which Mama wound up cutting off, and I almost skinned her for it, but she got tired of brushing it because Beth was a tomboy. She was always into something and never cared much about that hair. Well, there she is growing up, and she was a pom-pom girl, and she took dance lessons and was into everything. Studies, didn't care too much about studies. She mostly cared about having fun with her friends. And I didn't get to see her after she was 13 years old because I married somebody whose name was Judy. This is her, though, 1994. She had a baby, and that baby's name is Jessica. And Jessica is very much loved by this family. She's everyone's love. Ronnie and all of his friends, she's been raised by about 14 different people, and try and steer her out of as much trouble as they can keep her out of. But Jessie being Jessie and having that smile between her soccer and friends and all, Jessie doesn't get in trouble. She's a wonderful girl. She loves the Lord, and in fact, I'm always amazed when she tells me that she goes to the Baptist church down the street. But she had her 16th birthday here at the house, and I'll tell you what, her friends are wonderful. She's a wonderful girl, and she's an absolute joy to her mother and her grandmother and everybody around her. Don't know if she's going to college yet. We'll find out as time goes on. Well, after Beth, of course, I told you we had Ronnie, and he was born July. He wasn't born in July. That was taken July 14th of 77. Ron was born actually in April. April 13th. And this is him. You saw one of the other pictures of him, but that's him. And that's him with his mom. And he's always just been a delight. You look in his eyes and he's lit up. I'll tell you, he's a goer. He's 28 years old today and he's still going, still smiling. This is him in 81, and I could probably tell about 4,000 stories about him. But I think the one story I would tell about him is that you can never get this kid down. He's always a goer. He's always pestered by his sister who claimed him when he was born and said, "That's my baby." And she pesters him to this day, she being 38 and he being 28. He loves football, and one of his football coaches in high school turned him around, turned him from actually a D student to an A student. He graduated with honors. Here he graduated from the 8th grade. And it was after this that I talked to his mother, and I lived up in Yucca Valley, and she allowed him to come and live with me. He didn't care for it much, but he stuck with me for 4 years and played high school football and did very well in Yucca Valley. This is 94. This is in our home in Yucca Valley as he was growing up. And he learned a lot through our church. He learned a lot from his football coach. And I'll tell you what, you don't fool this kid. Graduated with 2 degrees. Here he's at a wedding with his Aunt Dee and Kathy and I. He graduated with 2 degrees from the University of Riverside and paid his own way through school. Took him 5 years, but he did it all on his own because he wanted to. This is his girlfriend, Elena. She absolutely loves him, and he and her get along just very, very well. She's a wonderful person, and we just include her in the family. She's just part of it. She's Elena. This is Judy Costner. Judy Costner and I grew up in high school, and when she was 40 and I had divorced Mary Ann, 1981. We moved here to this little house that I had in India over on the north side, not a very good area of town. Flat broke as we were, we moved there, and she had never been married, but she wound up marrying me in 1982. And we didn't have much to eat, so we grew a garden. If you came to my house, guess what you got to do? Go out and help with the garden. Water was very inexpensive, and the garden grew just like crazy. So we ate good, and we survived. That was Judy's Cadillac in the background that I sold for a couple $1,000s to help pay the bills because we didn't have any money. I made $6,450 all year. But then we got into this thing called the Amway business and began to grow and learned about life and how to be positive. And one of the best things business-wise ever happened to me. That was on our trip to Ada, Michigan, when we became direct distributors. And this is 3.5 years after we were married. We were doing so well, we moved to Yucca Valley and got a wonderful home there that we stayed at for 10 years. We ended up buying it, and it was just a wonderful place. This is a get-together with other distributors at Disneyland. We would go there every year and take Ron and just have a wonderful 4 days. Picture of Judy and I, we were married 10 years. And as I said, Ron was with us the last 4 years that he was in high school. And we were there 10 years, and then we were divorced. I kept the house for a couple of years after that, but we'd gone through an earthquake and all, and it was just not a place I wanted to keep. By this time, I was a manager with Director's Mortgage at Yucca Valley, and a top producer. We were doing well. The Amway business was producing well, so dollar-wise, I was doing fine, and I met Patty Bowler. Patty Bowler was a realtor out in 29 Palms, whose mother and sister I'd known for 12 or 13 years, and I got to know Patty, and after my divorce was final from Judy, Patty and I were married, and we settled down in our house in Yucca Valley, but times were hard. They were not kind to us at all, and especially in the real estate trade. So we moved to Salinas, California, and I worked there for a company called First Western Mortgage, left Director's Mortgage after Gary passed away. This is our wedding. Ronnie was my best man, and that's Liz, Patty's sister, was her matron of honor. So when we moved to Salinas, we rented for years and years till we got on our feet, and then finally we bought a home, and we bought this little place in Salinas in a very nice neighborhood called Creek Bridge. At our divorce, Patty sold this place, did very well on it. What we paid $248 for, I think she sold it for about $560. So housing prices went up, and we did well. And I happened to go to a wedding that Sharon Custer was having for her daughter, and I ran into an old friend, Judy Loftus. And right then I knew I was starstruck with this lady who I am with today and who is the love of my life. And so I asked her finally on a date, and she said, "Where would you like to go?" And I said, "Costa Rica." So for our first date, we spent a week in Costa Rica with, this is Bill Stewart and his wife Christine, and that's Rabbit Kakai. He's a very well-known surfer, and it was the Rabbit Kakai 8th annual surfing championship, and we just had a blast there. Well, Judy and I wound up moving to a home we bought in San Clemente, and since then, thanks to Doug and Sharon, they're putting us together. Love has just been very much a part of our lives. That's Doug and Sharon, and they're the reason that I have my own business now in San Clemente, that I own a house here, that Judy's here with me. I tell you, it's their love, and I've known them, golly sakes, since 1985. They've been an integral part of my life. Ronnie grew up with their kids, and they're just wonderful people. They're also the reason we went to Germany. One day Doug said, we were at dinner, and Doug said, "You want to go to Germany?" And I said, "Yeah, right." He said, "Here, I got tickets, let's go." So we went to Germany on them. I took Judy another time. We went to Niagara Falls. We've just been all over the place, she and I love to travel with her. I took her to the Biltmore. This is in Ashland, South Carolina, and we went through the largest house in the United States, just on a vacation, out to kick the leaves. We like the fall. It's a lot of fun. We always seem to wind up at Corky Pasillo's. That's Corky, my favorite cousin, and her daughter-in-law, Nancy, and we stay at their house for a little while. And then, of course, we have Christmas. We always love Christmas, and this is proof that Santa and Mrs. Santa are alive. At the North Pole, no, we waited for him to just drop in on us and spend a little time with him. With Judy came Heidi the dog. She's the guard dog and an integral part of our house. With no children being there, we get Heidi. and she's been with Judy for 16 years. Now, I ask you, is this a beautiful woman or not? And I'll tell you what, she gets more beautiful every day. So I asked her to marry me. I gave her a ring and I said, you know, as quickly as is possible, would you marry me? And she said, yes. So we're engaged, and the wedding is forthcoming. I'll let you know for sure when. With Judy also came kids, grown kids. This is her daughter, Michelle, a few years ago. And Michelle has a daughter whose name is Alicia. This in 2006 was Alicia's 16th birthday. And we had a fun party for her at a restaurant she wanted to go to called the Cheesecake Factory, and she brought a lot of her high school friends and all, and this was a part of the party. Her son Anthony comes by often, and this is a 2006 picture of Anthony and daughter Michelle and Judy. Anthony is married to Nancy. I have another picture of Nancy that I like also, but I like this one because it's close up. Nancy and he have been married for quite some time, and they have a business in Santa Ana, in the carpeting business. They clean carpets. This is the view from our back porch. It's one of my favorite views because it overlooks the ocean and a golf course, and I don't have a fence. No fences around my house. That's pretty cool. The nice thing about this house after I purchased it at Sharon's urging is it brought together our families, my family and Judy's. Here's Beth and me and Ronnie and Skeeter, Rhonda, all together for the first time with our kids all together, 13 years old, and they had never met each other. And you'll see Cindy and Jesse and Travis and me and Skeeter, Judy and my two other kids, just all together. What a wonderful, wonderful time we had. Beth and Ronnie, and Beth teasing Ronnie, and Rhonda teasing Ronnie. Everybody teases Ronnie. The poor guy. I wish I hadn't taught him not to hit girls. Look at this. What a nice way to rest and refresh ourselves. We love it here. We love the views. We love the weather. We love having people over. What God's given us is just an immensely wonderful thing that's brought our family together. And I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned a little bit from it. You know my name. You know that we love you. It's Christmas time, so Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. If I forget, what would I forget? Anniversaries, birthdays. I'll tell you that I'm aging, but that's not the case. I just forgot. I love you.